Okay, we got off to a rough start. But we're here. We're here. Yeah, tech is fun. It's my favorite part of our job. What about you, Kate? Do you love it?
That's the opposite of how we feel.
Yeah, that's true. Well, we've got a special guest here today. Do you want to introduce yourself and just what you do for work?
Sure.
And for play.
Well, and for play, mostly for play at this point. My name is Erin, and I run a brand called Paper Raven Co., which is a home decor, stationery, and licensing brand. I do a lot of botanicals and florals. That's sort of the hallmarks of my brand. And I have been running Paper Raven Co. since about 2015. So hopefully soon we'll mark a decade in business, which is a huge milestone for me. So I'm excited to continue on and go there. And yeah, just a year and a half more to go, I guess.
I think we need to pop some champagne. Woohoo!
Let's do it. Everybody listening, pop your own bottles. Pop in bottles.
Everyone drink
in the club.
I love that you led with home decor because that just sounds so cool. When you were little, did you think, I want to grow up and be an artist, I want to make home decor, or did you not even know that that was a job?
I think when I was young, and I think almost every creative person will say this, right? When they were young, it was a passion of theirs. And that rings true for me as well. I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do with it. This is almost like one of those cringy, embarrassing things to admit, but I was actually a musical theater major before I was an artist.
I love that. I was a musical theater gal too. Not a major. I didn't go that far, but I was close. I considered it as a major.
It's funny because one of the truths of my life is that my mom is always right. And I went for my first semester in college as a musical theater major, and I had to take this scenic painting course. And I realized that I loved making art. I said to my mom when I went in, she said, don't you want to go in undeclared? And I was like, no, Mom, I know what I want to do. I'm going to be on Broadway, Mom. And sure enough, 6 months later, I was like, I think I'm going to change my major to art. And she was like, oh, okay, sure. So
she didn't even give you a hard time for that one. She was just like, okay, I support you fully.
She did. She's like been my biggest cheerleader and the person who's just kind of had my back the whole time. So it's been a journey. I've sort of always known that I wanted to do something artistic. And then it became very clear to me in graduate school when I took a surface design course. And I realized, oh, this is my thing. I really, really like to do this. So I've been sort of exploring different avenues, and they've all led me to this place.
Okay.
So before we move past, though, I have to ask a very important question, which is, what is your favorite musical?
Oh, gosh, that's so hard. Historically, it's probably Les Mis. I was in it. I listened to it a bunch. I've seen it on Broadway.
What part did you play?
I was like a chorus member.
Bird Girl number 2, Seussical the musical.
My favorite was one time I was in The Wiz, which is an adaptation of The Wizard of Oz, and I played the Yellow Brick Road. I was literally the Yellow
That's amazing.
And I had to learn how to tap dance. It was fun.
I have a connection to The Wiz as well, and it's a very deep cut in my life. I used to be a roller skater competitively for 8 years, I think. We had this one event called Creative Solo, and you basically had to do this routine 3 different times. You did the same routine, but it was always dressed in costume and like theatrical. And so I did it as the Tin Man. I was fully decked out as the Tin Man. I even had silver lipstick on roller skates.
That's awesome.
Just wanted to put that out there.
Where's the deep cut, though? You were like, this is the deep cut in my life.
That is a deep cut.
That's just it? That's just...
Like, not many people know that I was once dressed as a Tin Man in roller skates competing at these weird underground tournaments for...
We've learned, in doing this podcast, we've learned that I don't get idioms. A deep cut would be an idiom, right?
I don't know. I actually don't know. Yeah, I guess.
Because every
I don't know where it comes from.
Don't understand where she's going, because I thought you meant like a deep cut, something that traumatized you that you need to get off.
Like an actual cut?
No, like an emotional cut.
Well, it did traumatize me as well.
It sounds great. I am going to ask your mom for pictures. And also shout out to the moms that support their children.
Yeah, she sewed every one of my costumes, including one where I had like a cow on my back from Gypsy. Do you know that musical?
Yes.
Oh,
and there, I had a stuffed cow on my back while I was doing tricks and turns and stuff.
So you weren't balancing the cow on your back?
No, it was strapped on. It had like seatbelt. straps that went underneath my outfit that was on the front, so you couldn't see them.
It would be better if you had to balance it the whole time through all your leaps and twirls.
It did throw me off. It was like a whole chunk of cow. Now, Erin, I know that you must have a bunch of really embarrassing photos from your years in the theaters.
Many.
You're going to need to hand those over so we can share them.
I didn't.
I'll share mine if you share yours.
Trying to steer the ship back to the art world. I mean, it's not necessary, but I do have a follow-up question. You said that you took a surface design class.
Yes.
I didn't know it existed until I was like well out of college.
Same.
I was in college and had the great fortune of graduating in 2008, but then I went back to graduate school at SCAD in Atlanta, and that was where I had that course. And SCAD is great because they're not paying me to say this. They're great because my undergraduate focused on like making art for the sake of getting better at it and for the sake of expressing yourself. But my education at SCAD was about how do you make a living doing this, and how do you do a client brief, and how do you market your artwork? And so they had a lot of classes that were more targeted to that. And it was really informative, and it really helped me in deciding on my career path. It kind of spelled it all out for me. Like, do I really want to do this? Do I like to do this? Do I not like to do this? And I love how before we sat down for this podcast, I was like, all right, Erin, this is a professional setting. We're going to answer, get your elevator pitch ready. And now we're talking about cows being strapped to your back.
Yeah, this
always.
is, so here this is the opposite of professional. Just kidding.
Well, and people want to hear the real people behind the art. You know, we don't got to put on no facade. We ain't no professionals over here.
What was that program called? What was that SCAD? But what was was it a specific degree or certification or just classes?
Yeah, I got my master's in illustration. So it was an illustration course.
And they taught you something about business.
SCAD takes a very business-oriented approach to art. And again, they're not paying me anything to say this. I actually just really, really enjoyed my education there. I hope you're not hearing my dog take a drink in the background right now.
I can't hear it.
Okay, good. It's getting even more professional by the minute.
It's ambiance.
I love it. Okay, so I love that we have already gone down a rabbit hole because this is so important. We've talked a lot about how you don't have to have a degree and that it's not always necessary, but this is a really great example of how a degree helped you because I actually had the opportunity to get my master's paid for. And I swear, I worked at the university as an art director and in the marketing department for, universities are huge. If anyone doesn't realize, there's like 18 marketing directors in different departments. And they're all called different titles. Like none of them are actually called art director, but you read the prompt and you're like, so it's an art director job or what is this? And I went to the graphic design program and I said I got my undergrad in graphic design at that same school. And I was like, if I'm going to get this for free, I want to do what I love. I love graphic design. And they were like, I don't mean to badmouth them, but they were like, you already took these classes. Go take business. And I was like, why wouldn't I learn more about design? Why wouldn't I learn about the business of design or whatever? This was years ago. It's probably changed since. But I felt like there was this hole in the market where, okay, so sure, I can keep practicing design, but I'm already doing that in my everyday life. And so I was like, maybe I'll do animation. Maybe I'll do whatever. And I could do an MBA. It was discouraging to be like, I don't want to take the same classes I've already taken, but I want to keep learning. And there didn't seem to be a solution for someone who wants to go work for themselves, but in the creative field. And I still feel like we have ways to go on bridging that gap. So that's really great to hear that you had a good experience and you even got an introduction to surface design, which is our absolute favorite income stream.
Yeah.
So your undergrad was separate or like a different school?
Yeah, I went to a really small liberal arts school in Pennsylvania and I was a painting major.
Okay.
And I was musical theater and then I switched to painting.
Yeah, got it. So did you feel like that was a good combination to have your education kind of split up like that, where you could concentrate on the skill building and then concentrate on the career building side of things? Is that something that you would recommend, changing up the schools for if you're going to do a master's? Like, how did you feel about that combo?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think when I was in my undergrad, the focus was on making art for art's sake and expressing yourself. So then I left school. It was 2008. Everyone knows what happened and how great the world was. So it was very difficult to find a job in my field. I ended up doing a bunch of random stuff. I took a couple years off, and then I decided my career is kind of going like this. It's not going anywhere that I want it to go to. So I need to go back to school so that I can increase my skill set. And I had heard about SCAD, and I decided that because they were so business oriented and so commercially focused, that was where I wanted to put my efforts. And after that, my career, I feel sort of like kind of just took off. Not that school will like solve all your problems or hand you a career, but the connections I made there and the knowledge that I learned, I knew I wasn't going to get that from my original undergrad because that was not the focus. I knew I needed to go somewhere. I wanted to move to a new city, explore something different, meet new people. So at that point in my life, it just made a lot of sense. If you're listening to this and you're in school and they offer a graduate program, it's definitely something to check out. I just think for me, it just sort of organically happened that way. And I'm thankful that it did. But now that I'm past the graduate school thing, we're in a time where there's so much education online that you can build the skill set that you need for business and for art, that I just happen to go to school and love it. But there's so many other ways to build your own education. I don't recommend going into thousands and thousands of dollars of debt. Luckily, in my career, my business has done well enough. This past year, I paid off all my debt. So I'm debt.
Oh, another champagne pop for you. Wow,
Yeah.
that's huge. How did it feel? Was it climactic or anticlimactic?
It was sort of anticlimactic because
I hate that when that happens.
The moment that I made the last payment, my husband knew that that's what I was doing. And so we went out for dinner and we celebrated. And then my mom, who actually works in financial aid, said, "Oh, they're going to send you a paper. It's going to come in the mail that says your loans were paid off." No, it was an email. I printed that sucker. I put it on my wall and it's on my wall.
With how much interest you paid them over the years, I think they could have afforded to send you a freaking paper.
You would think.
Cheapskates.
I want to clarify one of the things that I said, how like Katie and I didn't have any idea what surface design was. We were both graphic design majors. And so if we had been in illustration, which quite frankly, I don't really even know if there was a program that was strictly illustration. It might have been more of a I think every school kind of handles it a little differently. And so I'm curious now if like that could have been an elective or something. I also was a transfer student, so my whole experience was like rushing to the finish line to try and make up for lost time. So I just want to clarify that, because that doesn't mean that every graphic design program doesn't touch on it. And it sounds like most illustration programs do. I don't really know.
My program was split up into two paths. You could either go into the graphic design path or you could go to the art direction path. And I went art direction.
That's cool. Yeah, I was an art director for a hot minute.
One hot minute.
We actually
Did you not like it?
Paths.
I did like it, but it was very corporate. And at that point, I knew that was not, even though I liked the people I was working with and I liked the job I was doing, the corporate setting was not for me. I'm the first person to admit that, like, I know my strengths, and my strengths don't shine in a workplace like a corporate workplace. So outside of me, that translates to probably me not being the best employee, but that makes me a great business owner. You know what I mean? And so my early professional life was figuring out why jobs, I would get a year into a job and I would be like, I can't do this anymore. Now I'm almost 10 years into my business and I'm like, I love this every day.
Yes.
I could do this forever. And it's really just trying and seeing what works for you. And like my husband thrives in an environment that's structured where he's part of a team and loves collaboration. And I'm like, get out of my way of stuff to do. Like, I can do it. Like, it's just.
You found your fit.
Exactly. I found like my magic or my lane or whatever you want to call it. So.
Can you talk about that transition to deciding to work for yourself and like taking the leap?
Sure. It's actually sort of a harrowing story for me. So I won't go into like too much detail, but essentially after I worked as an art director, I worked as a product designer in like a smaller company that wasn't super corporate, but was very toxic. And I went into this job thinking I'm going to love this. And then I got into this environment and I realized this is not for me. I'm not gelling here. I came into a team that was very close knit for a number of years, and I was the newest player on that team. And again, I don't need to get into the nitty gritty of it because at this point, I'm like almost 10 years past that. And I'm like, this is not my business story anymore. I knew very early on that I was not going to stay at that job very long. And so I started laying the foundation of building up my Instagram, building up my business. I started designing cards on my lunch breaks and at night. And I wasn't married, I didn't have children. So there was time in my life to do that. Then I ended up leaving a little bit sooner than I thought I would. But because I had laid this foundation, it wasn't as hard of a transition as I was fearing it would. I think maybe members of my family were fearing it was because they knew that I wanted to go out on my own. And my goal was to make my salary back within a year. And I actually ended up doing that within 9 months. So it worked out pretty well. I mean, now, not to toot my own horn, but if you've spoken to me before, and I know we have, that I'm very transparent about numbers because I think it just does everyone a service. So now, over the last 3 years consistently, we're a multi-six-figure business. And that to me is like what I wanted for my life. I say that not that that's like the only definition of success, because it's not. There are bigger definitions of success for me in that I have time in my business. I'm not hourly dependent on work. I don't trade dollars for hours anymore. And that to me is really important. It sort of was one of the most difficult experiences of my life to leave that job and start my own business. But it was also one of the biggest gifts I've ever received, was to be let go of from that job so that I could do this.
Isn't it funny how that happens?
Yeah.
The things that you're like most afraid of, when you actually face them in life, they're the biggest, most important pivotal moments that push you in a direction that maybe you were too afraid to do on your own.
Yeah. And it's weird because I'm like a very type A person. The bar was always set high. I'm a high achiever. It's just what my parents required of me. So I was not the person that got let go from a job. That was not in line with the picture of myself that I had in my head. So it was something that hurt me and that I struggled with, but I ultimately knew I was going to leave that job anyway. So it was definitely a moment of personal growth for me.
Yeah, and look how much you killed it after, once you were in an environment where you really thrived.
Exactly.
Did you feel like the business side of things was a struggle at first? I know you've said some of those assets that maybe didn't make you a good fit at a corporate setting or working for someone else as an employee. Did you know that going into it? I really get the business stuff, or was a lot of that learned? Because I feel like Katie and I had a natural inkling for it. We were willing to learn and tough through some of the stuff that we were like, this is boring, but it's going to be really helpful. But we educated ourselves a lot.
Yeah, I've naturally always had that mindset. My mom works in financial aid and finance. My dad works in finance. So I'm just lucky enough to have two parents who kind of gave me that side of my brain. And it's something that really interests me. If I ever decided to teach myself, I would rather teach business than teach how to make art. So it's just something that I really love. And when I was at this job that I left, I was watching business podcasts. One of the podcasts that really helped me was Katie Hunt's Proof to Product.
Yes.
We love Katie Hunt.
Yes, she's awesome. And her program is awesome. And it just gave me, again, no one's paying me to say any of this. It's just because I love it. It gave me the building blocks to be able to say, okay, here's how I do this in an industry standard way. Here's how I can tailor my business to be successful from the foundation.
Did you do her program, Paper Camp?
I did. Yeah.
Okay, because Ilana did it too.
So actually, yeah, it was great. And I went to Paper Camp with like a very, very tiny letterpress line. I had a tabletop letterpress and I got a partial scholarship to go to Paper Camp in LA. Yeah, it was really great. And I actually left there feeling really good, but also feeling like, well, this was confirmed after the next couple months of digesting all the information, but kind of feeling like, oh, I don't really think this is exactly what I want to do. I had a planner, a calendar that did really well on Etsy back in 2011 or 12. And so I was like, let's expand that line. And it didn't light me up. I was really excited to go there and learn. And I took so much information in. And then I walked to the stationery show and I was like, wow, my feet really hurt from just walking around. and the socializing. I'm really drained at the end. And I was like, I actually, at that show, maybe I don't want to do my own line. I really want to keep freelancing. And so I was like, I'll just like do a small line, but I won't wholesale the same way these other people are. And I went up to this one booth and they made planners. And I said, hey, I really like your work. I also make a planner. Like, do you ever work with freelancers? Mm-hmm. And that became my first licensing gig and paid my salary for the next year. And obviously that was very irregular. Like, that was an anomaly. Licensing doesn't pay that well, but it was like they were really new to the market. Buyers were really excited. I still work with them to this day, and it completely opened my eyes to what options there were. And I would not have gotten there if I didn't figure out like what my product shop would look like. And so, yeah, that was an invaluable experience. That was amazing. And I met so many people whose work I still see on the shelves today, which was so cool.
I love that you said that, because I think I had sort of a similar revelation in my own business, which is how I moved into the licensing space. And it was realizing that my business could go in one of two directions. And one of them was wholesaling and getting a sales rep and having a warehouse. And everything about that just made me feel like, ugh, like I don't want to do that. I can relate to that so much. And I think there's so much value in realizing like what we don't want as much as realizing like what we do want. And sometimes we have to have those experiences to be like, this was a great learning experience for me because I learned this is not what I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For me, the thing that was nope for a product shop was the logistics and the shipping. And I still have some things in my product shop and they sell, not crazy because I don't point to them, but I just feel the most stress whenever I'm working on something else or doing a freelance project or working on Good Type. And then I have this thing in the back of my head, oh, I have to pack this. It's such a small thing to do, but for some reason, it's like the most stressful little nugget of a idea in my head. So it's just, whoo, the shipping logistics and then the emails for customer service. When your mail doesn't get some place in Egypt and you're like, what can I do? What can I do? You want me to come over there?
You want me to come over there?
I will.
Had that experience. One time I had a customer who was, well, the mailman said he dropped it off. Can you ask him? And I was like, ma'am,
yeah, me and your mailman are really
you're
close.
in Michigan. Like,
yeah, that's not how the USPS works, honey.
Oh, that's funny. I've been there.
It's funny because when I get the order, we have like a couple things we ship out and like gifts for people or something, or like if something's sold in my Etsy shop, I am like, this is the most important thing. Drop everything. It needs to get out right away, because it's like you got brownie points for shipping faster. And so I'm really glad I don't have stuff to ship anymore, because my ADHD would just be like, okay, time to ship something. Let me drop everything. And then hours later, I'm like, oh shit, I didn't finish the thing I was working on.
Well, it's funny too, because one of your love languages is gift giving and you're great at it. But I think there's some kind of overlap going on here, because even when it's something that they've ordered from your shop, just the fact that you want to please them so much and give them this great experience. Yeah.
To get a 1-star review.
Do you get 1-star reviews from those people?
No, gosh. But you know that
punch them in the face.
You know that the customer, first of all, I actually don't read reviews because that would just be really bad for me. But I do remember like when someone writes a bad review, they also are going to email you and like send you a nasty email. And whenever they do, it's the smallest issue. One time, I swear, this person wrote me and was like, my planner came completely water damaged. And I was like, it's literally wrapped in cellophane. Then it's wrapped in bubble wrap. No, it didn't. And she like opened it up and she had written in it and it had water had like a cup might as well have been in the picture. And I was like, you are.
She was trying to get one past you.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't know what you want me to do. You spilled water on it. I don't remember what I did. I probably sent her a new one or something because I was like ridiculous. But it's just, where do these people come up with it? Could you imagine? I mean, I can. People probably do it all the time, going into Target and being like, I wore these pants 3 times and then I spilled on them. Can I just get a new pair?
Yeah.
What? The people, what? Just, you have to buy it.
Have you guys ever seen the Instagram account Small Business Memes?
Yeah.
That's all the horror stories. And I just sit there and scroll through it and laugh and laugh and laugh. Luckily, this is not me trying to butter anyone up, but I've actually had some of the best customers. It's very rare that I get like a nasty email from customers. even over the holidays. So I really have like the best customers, and they're so nice and understanding to me, but I really do put in the effort to like make the experience really special and timely. I think in our society, there's been like a shift of expectations around shipping, logistics, timeliness. And sometimes that's hard for a business to keep up with. And people have expectations, like they have Amazon expectations for me. Right. And I can't fulfill that.
And then when someone does write the review, it speaks so much louder because you take it personally and you're like, they've written you in 3 different places. And so if you get one bad review or maybe negative review out of 100, that's the one that you remember, which is difficult. But yeah, I agree. Our expectations are crazy off. But how are you managing all that? Do you have help shipping? Do you have drop shipping? How are you handling all that, especially because you have several income streams, which we'll get into in a second?
I'll just be really honest. I'm not sure I am handling it. I've known for a long time that I need an assistant, but I just really, for whatever reason, struggle with it. So I've sort of started to pay attention to that. I know I need an assistant to help me do all of these things. I don't feel lit up when I think about having someone come in and help me because I work from my home, and I would personally feel like I need to clean my house before they come. I need to make sure I have nothing else going on before they come. And so that for me is just like a personal mental block. And so I've really tried to just be intentional and gentle with myself and pay attention to it and say, okay, this is clearly not something you want to do. How do you scale your product line to something that is manageable for you? So maybe it's how do I add on more licensing so that I can sell product, but I don't have to physically package it myself? Or how can I add products that do not require me to assemble them? That I can just put it in a box. Like, for example, I have this, which is this lovely lettering kit. Maybe it's backwards, but this is from one of my partners that I work with. And this was made out of one of my educational books that I produced with Quarto. And so this looks absolutely adorable. I literally just have to pop it in a box and then ship it out. So that for me works really well versus and something.
They're shipping that out too, though, right?
They are. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a nice balance.
Exactly. So if I'm selling it myself, I have to do the customer service and the shipping, the logistics, but I also, my profit margin is larger on it because I bought it wholesale from them and then I sell it retail. But then if they're handling all of that, I still get my royalty on that license.
Dream situation.
Yeah, it's been really great. And it's been something that I've had to learn that's like, how can I get more of that? Because that's really working for me versus something where I have to take a lot of time to assemble something on my own. For example, these are one of my best selling things. Well, here, I'll put it up against my shirt because you can see it better that way. But I have these acrylic ornaments and they have this beautiful little backer and they come in a box, but I have to assemble every single one of them. And they're my best sellers and I love them. But I am at the point where I have to be honest with myself. Can I do the pre-boxing of this in August while I'm watching, or could I do it in October when I'm watching a horror movie with my husband or when I'm watching football or whatever? So it's really a balance of finding how much time do I have to do this stuff? And then how can I make it easier on myself, either through licensing or through developing products intentionally that don't require a lot of extra effort on my part.
That's such a smart way to combat potential burnout. Because we always tend to overload ourselves or take on things that we can't really handle because we're giving our future selves those problems to deal with.
Yes.
But you're really getting ahead of it. And yeah, knowing yourself over time, it takes time.
And having realistic boundaries for yourself, like, sure, it would be amazing for every small business to be able to say, I'm selling $1 billion in greeting cards. But that's actually like so much more work. With more units comes more work. And some of these bigger retailers,
right, just picture so 1 billion.
So many, but it's also like it's unrealistic for a small business. At that point, you become a bigger business, or at that point, you have to hire staff. And so you can scale your monetary piece of your business, your finances, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're getting into every big box store, which I know you're in some amazing stores, but it's just boundaries on how much you can actually take on. And sometimes that means saying no to things, or that means only offering a limited edition, or just figuring out what's going to work for you. So I love that you're really intentional about how you do that. And you have, like Katie said, set yourself up to avoid burnout so that you don't just end up hating your business.
Yeah, that's
That
so
would
true.
suck.
And honestly, I feel like I would hear conversations like this when I was younger in business and think, oh, I've got to figure this all out now. This took me years and years of being burned out to realize what I needed to do. And so if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I need to do this, it's okay to allow yourself the time to learn. That's something that I've also learned in my old age of 37, that I can allow myself the time to learn, to fail, to try again, to not do things perfectly, and then to perfect them because I learned from my mistakes. So,
Burnout's also kind of like a rite of passage. You have to go through it and
yes.
like do the things that get you to that point to then realize, oh, I need to make changes, because otherwise you're not going to be able to find the right direction.
Yeah.
Can we quickly talk about both published books and you do art licensing? So I think it'll be a little bit of a shorter topic. Can you talk a little bit about your experience putting a book together?
Yeah, I did bring one over with me, but I can go get one
You
if
have
you
a
need me
couple.
to.
No, that's fine. You have a couple. We'll put links to them in the show notes.
Okay. Yeah, my first one is called Art Starts with a Line, and it was published with Quarto at Walter Foster. And then my second book was sort of an addendum to that called Art Starts in the Heart. And it was more of like a how to draw book, but also a journaling prompt book to inspire creativity and new ideas for your own artwork. And it was really fun. When I worked with Quarto, they gave me a writer's fee, and then I also had a set royalty amount based on sales. And it was a lot of work up front. I remember thinking how much time I was putting into it. And so it was great to have a writer's fee because it was compensating me for that time in creating the content of the book. And it's been parlayed into all kinds of different products like this one. This is actually like from one of my books. I didn't actually do any extra work to create this product. They took all of my stuff that I had already done and they made it into this beautiful product that has like a sketchbook and pens. And so it's been great because it's become all of these other different things. So my time that I spent creating that book continues to increase in value for me. But it was a lot of work up front and I learned a lot of things. So when I did my second book, I felt more empowered to realize what I had done before. I needed to give myself way more time to do it in, first of all. And then second of all, I needed to really think more strategically about who it was actually for. And it wasn't for everyone. So
how much time did you give yourself the first time versus the second time?
I'm almost embarrassed to admit the first time.
Let's hear it.
I didn't realize what I was getting into. And I think there was a time at the end of the project, right before the deadline, where I probably stayed up till 4 a.m. scrambling. And I look back on those pages that I did, and I'm sure to someone else, they are absolutely fine. But to me, I know that was not my best. And so when I got my second book with them, I said to myself, I did not like that feeling. I need to allow myself way more time. I need to clear my schedule and I need to tell my clients because I don't want that feeling again. Because if this is going out into the world and people are spending their hard-earned money to read it, thinking they're going to get something of value, I need to give them my best so they get that. You know what I mean?
So
did you have a conversation with your publisher or your editor about the amount of time that you felt like you had? Did you consider asking for an extension, or were they the one who set a really, really tight timeline and forced you to stay to it?
They set a timeline, and it wasn't, for me, that was a great thing because it was something like you had a schedule that was week 1, you did this many pages. Week 2, you did this many pages. And you had to
wow.
And so for me, I didn't feel forced to do that. It helped me have structure because I'm sure many of us, I would leave everything to like the last week and then be like, I can't do this. It was a very valuable learning experience for me. I've taken that knowledge, and when I've had larger projects come along, I know that I don't like that feeling. So I've been able to just kind of learn from that and say like, okay, I am going to give this the amount of time that it deserves instead of thinking I'll just fit it in here.
Yeah. We were just talking about a book opportunity and it was 4 to 6 month turnaround and it was tough. But Katie and I were like, there's literally no way. There's just no way. There's no possible way we could start
There
that
were
tomorrow.
multiple reasons.
Yeah, there were other reasons too.
Yeah, but that was definitely one of them.
I think someone asked us the other day, like, I'm always worried I'm not going to get things done on time for clients. When you're in control, you can say, I'm going to get it to you in 3 weeks, but it's only going to take you two. Like whatever, like adding in that buffer. And we just really couldn't do that. That's really great to hear that it worked out for you. And you feel like it's been a lucrative part of your business.
It's funny. It has been a good part of my business, but licensing far and away is the majority of my income. Some of that is from my books, but I wouldn't say that my books make up any huge part of my business in and of themselves.
So I love that you're saying licensing is a big part of your business, because we talk about licensing a lot, but we also are really transparent that licensing is not our full-time income. Licensing is a really great piece of our pie. And if we had time to make new art every day, it would be a much bigger chunk. But a lot of the people that we talk to, and I was talking to someone the other day, and they said they know 4 people who make a full-time salary on only licensing. That's not out of 8,000. That's out of anyone she knows who's in the licensing world. And that's not to be discouraging. That's just to be like, people do other things. And so for both of us, it's been a really great asset to add to our other pieces, but it's a really big piece for you.
It is. Yeah. I'm proud, without hopefully coming off conceited, that I can be number 5 in that. Over 6 figures of my business is licensing income.
What does that look like? Is that greeting cards? That's including your books?
So that includes clients that I have minted where I do, I have samples right here.
You came prepared.
I did. Well, you guys let me prepare ahead of time. So these are obviously not my family pictures, but this is a card that I have for sale with Minted right now. And you can basically go in and add your own family photos and then add your name and put a backer on this and envelope liners. So I do a lot of licensing that way with Minted, with Postable, with MPix. There's also a company called Greenvelope that I work with, and they do completely digital cards. So if sending a digital card and not using paper and helping the environment is your jam, then that's a great way to send a card and greetings too. So I do a lot of work for companies like that. I do a lot of collaborations. Right here, I have Casetify cases. Yeah. So I just launched my Casetify collection, and they're just absolutely wonderful to work with. I really like working with them, and their products are gorgeous too, and they're not paying me to say that.
Well, listen, Casetify, we'd love to work with you. We'd love to create some art for you.
But they are honestly really awesome. They sent me a ton of samples, and I geeked out over all of them.
They're beautiful.
So I do licensing with not smaller brands, because Casetify is not a small brand, but with more boutique brands as well. There's a lot of brands that have open call for art and design. Yeah. That's mostly all of my licensing. And I would say licensing makes up between 70 to 75% of my income.
Wow.
So this past year, it's been over 6 figures of licensing income, which is great because that's where I spend my time. And I know for you guys, education is a bigger piece of your pie. So it's really, what do you enjoy the most? Exactly. What brings you the most money? Where do you find your happy place? And for me, it's licensing. And then I have retail, which is probably a remaining 10 to 15% of my income. And then I have wholesale, which is a remaining 10 to 15%. Then I have teaching. And then, maybe not embarrassingly, but the last 2 years, I've had to add infringement as one of my revenue streams.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Because I've had to account for a legitimate amount of income that's come from addressing copyright issues. So far this year, nothing, which is great because it always seems to roll around. So most of my job is licensing, selling retail products, and then selling wholesale products. And like I had said before, I had this crux in my business where I looked down like a fork in the road and saw wholesale and trade shows and warehousing and employees. And I said, that's not what I want. I want to go over here, sit in my pajamas, drink my coffee, make art that makes me happy, and let all these other people, all these other clients do what they do best, which is creating beautiful products and making sure they get into the hands of people who love them. Right. And if I can give them the artwork for that, to facilitate that, then I'm the happiest camper.
Beautiful. I want to just add that you're independent. You are not represented. Is that correct?
I'm not. I've thought about it. When I first started out 10 years ago after grad school, I had a professor who was represented, and the numbers that I was hearing at that point was that reps or agents take, I think it was 25 to 30%. And most recently I've heard more like 50. That's something to consider. And for me right now, that is not something that would be the best fit for me.
Right.
But for someone else, that might be a great fit.
Yeah.
Because I like doing all the outreach.
Absolutely. And so I just wanted to add that because we talked about how we don't know that many people who are licensing full. I mean, yes, there are plenty of people licensing full time, and that's where they're dedicated. Katie and I admittedly haven't made new art in a long time. So it's really hard to license new pieces if you're not generating them often. I am represented, and illustration agents or editorial agents take 20, 25, maybe 30. But traditionally, licensing agents take 50 because they are doing a ton of marketing. They are managing all the manufacturing with the client. That puts a barrier or a boundary or a cap on your income. It also gives you the opportunity to sit back and just focus on art. And so there's pros and cons to it. It's not for everyone. And I love hearing that you're saying, actually, that's not for me right now.
Yeah, I'm very interested in an agent. It's definitely something that I've thought about. And Ilana, I know we've had a conversation about agents before. It's definitely something that's been on my radar for a long time that I would like to explore because, to your point, there is time that I realize, I think we talked about this at the conference, the opportunity cost of me having to make my own contract and me having to go to negotiate with the client over the price. And when you have an agent, they do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can just focus on the artwork. There are parts of it that sound very appealing to me. There are parts of it that I'm also like, well, I'm pretty good at this. It doesn't take me a ton of time. So now.
Is that worth 50% of my income?
Right.
Exactly.
Right now. Yeah, go ahead, Katie.
Oh, I was just going to say, I want to hop in real quick because we have to start wrapping up soon. You mentioned that you currently do the outreach yourself, and I want to talk just a little bit more about that because I'm sure our listeners are wondering, like, how have you found all these opportunities? How can they do a similar thing? Can you speak to that and how you've gotten these licensing jobs that you have?
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that more than half of the licensing partnerships I have found me through Instagram and reached out. And I credit that not to having like 1 million followers on Instagram, but simply by being consistent and showing up consistently, no matter how many likes or follows I get from it. But I have a spreadsheet of companies that I find that I like. And the spreadsheet includes the company name, their website, and then if I can find any information about an art director or anyone that I can submit to. And then what I do is I send a tailored email to them that's very short and sweet. They don't need to read a ton of paragraphs about me and my life story. And then I usually try and do a mock-up of my art on some type of product that is kind of like what they do. Like, so for Casetify, I took a blank image on their website and then I just mocked up like my own designs and
smart.
And said to the contact, this is like something that I would do for you. Could we do a collection? So I made it really easy for them to see how my work would look on a product of theirs or something similar to theirs. If it's a notebook or a cell phone case, it makes them easy for them to be like, oh yeah, that looks good. Let's proceed. Versus if I were to send them like, here's my Instagram link. Well, they can see all my artwork and that's great. Maybe they even like it, but if they can't see it on their product, it takes them a while to, I don't want to make a generalization, but to me, it seems like that is a barrier between just being able to be like, here it is. Do you like it?
Yeah. Plus places like that get a ton of generic copy paste emails and having something that tailored just shows how much thought you've put into it. And it gives them a really good idea that you're going to be a really good partner.
Yeah, I agree. And I'll say like one little caveat to that too. There's a lot of amazing educators in the surface design space right now. A lot of that includes here are my swipe files and stuff. But I just want to remind everybody that a lot of the clients that you might pitch to might be getting pitches from other people who have those swipe files. And so if they're reading the same thing over and over again, just an encouragement to like differentiate.
Yeah. So by swipe files, you're talking about when people give a canned email template or something. People are just copying and pasting them and from the same source. Yeah.
So just a reminder with all of that, if you're making a point to like pitch all of these art directors, just making sure that you're doing something that kind of stands out from the pack because they are, to your point, getting a ton of emails. So the easier and more authentic you can make it, the more success that you will have, or at least that's what I have found to be true.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to human connection. Like they could be getting so much art and some art might look a little too similar. And so if you're able to make that human connection, it could be the thing that wins you over from a sea of really amazing artists.
Do you know what percentage of your new licensing gigs, not residuals, are with the same company again versus new companies? I'm just curious if you're building these repeat relationships with people, if that's a big part of your business, or if you're more about constantly reaching out to new leads.
That's actually a really good point. I don't know if I could give you a specific percentage or number, but off the top of my head, I would say that probably like 60% of it is repeat business and 40 is new outreach. If you have a product-based business, like selling to someone who you've already sold to is a lot easier than selling to a new cold lead. So I try and remember that as important as my artwork is to selling that product, the person that I am and the way that I conduct business is just as important, because it's just personal relationships. It's just what business is. And if you're great to work with and you have a great product, it's a win-win. But if you're not responding to your emails, if you're missing your deadlines, like, I mean, that's sort of like common sense. Like, don't miss your deadline. But I think that those things really have an impact as well. How personable you are and how kind you are and how timely you are.
That's such an important thing to highlight, that to think about the repeat customer potential, because I think when people hear about you're making multi-six figures and you're killing it doing licensing, I think it feels maybe intimidating, like, oh, I have to continuously find clients all the time. And how are there even that many clients to find? But kind of reframing it to finding relationships that then you can continue to nurture over time. It makes it seem a little bit more manageable and more fun, because yay to human interaction. That can be a really rich and rewarding part of what we do.
And
that's so true.
You said you also do a little bit of teaching. Where are you teaching? Where can people learn from you?
Right now, it's stuff like when we just did the conference together, and it's very informal at this point. I've gone back and forth on how much teaching I want to do, if I want to run a course. And right now, my licensing takes up so much of my time that it's one of those things that's just always in the back of my mind. Like, you want to do a course, but then I think about
how much work it is.
And I think about, if I were to do something like this, like I want to go all the way and do it to the best of my ability. And where is the time for me to really do that? And it's really just a mental block for me, because if it was a priority, then I would make that time. It's been helpful to just listen to my intuition and realize, okay, if this is not a priority, it's okay. I'm still sort of waiting for the time where it's so clear to me that I need to teach that there's nothing else that can be a larger priority. And right now I'm just enjoying making the art and licensing with different people. And that's where I find my joy right now. But I think about teaching very often.
I love how you just phrased that about making the time and making it a priority when that feels right. I wish we could talk all day. This is amazing. I think you're so intentional about your work, and your work is beautiful. Where can people find you? It's the best place to follow your work and get in touch and buy your products.
Sure. Well, my online shop is at shoppaperravenco.com. And then if you want to find me on social media, I'm at paperraven.co. Those are the two biggest ways that you can find me. I'm also at Paper Raven Co. on Fair. If there are any retailers listening to this conversation, I wholesale my products there as well. So yeah.
Well, and then work is some real eye candy too. So people can prepare to drool, people.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Ilana, we had briefly mentioned TikTok. I'm still trying to get myself over there because I know we're going to have this conversation.
That's the next episode. Yeah. Come back for that. Thanks for coming on the show, Erin. All right.
Thank you guys so much for having me.
All good things.